In this week's nail tutorial, I will be showing you how to do these POLYGEL Valentine's Day nails, so keep watching to see how I did this step by step. So let's go through each step that I do to achieve long-lasting polygel nails. So the first step is always nail prep. So I start off with a cuticle pusher and I start pushing back the cuticle very gently and thoroughly on all 5 nails. I like to use the scraper tool on the other side as well, just to kind of remove some of the cuticle that may be coming up. And I try to make sure I get into those corners as well before I go in with a 240 grit sanding band from Pana. In that last clip, I was just seasoning the sanding band against the hand file so that we remove any rough edges, and this is the E file I'm using, the Melody Susie one. It goes up to 30 RPMs and it does have a forward and reverse motion. But for this step, you definitely want to use a very low speed. I'm going at about 4 RPMs and just removing any shine from the nail plate and any cuticle that may be left behind. This next step is also super important, which is basically dehydrating and cleansing. I'm using some Young Nail Swipe and a lint-free wipe. All these products will be listed in the description below so you can take a look at all the details and where I purchased them. So I'm basically removing any oils that may be left behind because that is a really common reason that lifting may occur. So you definitely want to use a good dehydrator for this step. So we are using the Vevey Stiletto nail tips and taking some Young Nails brush on glue and just applying a nice amount at the bottom of the nail tip. Definitely make sure that the nail tips that you're using fit correctly from sidewall to sidewall. If they're too big or too small, that could be another reason that your nail might pop right off or break easily. Once you find the right size nail tip, you'll just want to make sure that you secure it with some glue like I'm doing here. I usually hold it down for about 10 seconds and the brush on glue will usually stick very well at this point as long as I apply some pressure. So you'll see that it's sticking pretty well, but you can also go in from some other angles just to make sure that everything is nice and secure, including the sides of the nail tip. And we are going to be doing a kind of long almond stiletto nail shape, more of like a long almond than anything. So using a stiletto nail tip that's pre-shaped helps a lot because you basically just have to take a file and round out the edges like I'm doing here. This is a 100 over 180 grit hand file. I kind of switch between the coarse and less coarse side, but definitely when I'm just kind of rounding out the edges, just making sure we have a nice round free edge, I'll probably use the less coarse side. So the lower the number, the coarser your file is going to be, meaning the rougher it's going to be. So the 100 side is going to be more coarse than the 180 side. And later you'll see that I'm using an 80 grit hand file, which is even more coarse. But anyways, because the nail tips are pre-shaped, this doesn't take very long. I'm basically just rounding out the free edge. So you'll see what I mean here by this is basically kind of a long almond shape. But anyways, once you've done that, you can go back in with your fine grit sanding band and just blend the free edge with the natural nail and then remove the shine from the rest of the nail tip. And we're using a very low speed here as well. And then I'm gonna take a manicure brush and just some rubbing alcohol and just remove that dust. I love using manicure brushes for stuff like this because it really just makes sure that all the dust is off of your nails and that you're kind of, getting an even coverage there. Once everything is dry, we're gonna go in with some Protein Balm. This is a primer, so I'm basically using this on the natural nail and trying to make sure that I apply it, close to the free edge, basically, where that nail tip is secured. You wanna just apply it right above that and then working your way up towards the cuticle. Once that's dry, you can go in with a gel base coat of your choice. I'm using Madam Glam here, and you wanna make sure you apply a nice even layer over the natural nail as well as the nail tip that you've applied with the glue. This is super important. So once you do this, you're gonna cure it in your nail lamp and you're gonna leave it sticky. So don't wipe off the top layer or anything. This is a really important step to make sure that when we go in with our polygel next, that everything sticks and the polygel has something to stick to since it is, a gel product. And we're almost ready for application. I'm just getting my slip solution ready. So I'm using 70% isopropyl alcohol and I'm using this sheer pink polygel from Macart called Le Corail. And this is the brush I'll be using. It's the Katz Kolinsky brush. Everything will be linked below. And before I get started, I'm just kind of working some slip solution into my brush. This is the solution, the liquid that's gonna basically help mold your polygel. So you wanna make sure that your brush is not too dry, but that it's not also overfilled with liquid because that can cause lifting as well and kind of just disintegrate the product. So you just wanna have the right amount of liquid on your brush, and you can go back and forth as needed as you're going through your application to add more liquid if the polygel is starting to get too sticky. So we're just finishing up the first bead here. I basically just patted the polygel into place and kind of just used a dragging motion from there. I try to make sure that I keep the sidewalls clean and remove any excess product from the free edge, and then I do cure in between each layer. And here's our cuticle bead. 2 beads is more than enough for this length and shape for me, but use as many beads as needed. So we want to place the bead just below the cuticle and then use the edges of our brush to kind of work it towards the cuticle area. You don't want to flood the cuticle area with too much product. You want to keep it as flush as possible, and then we will go back and refine it with our shaping. But you don't want a mountain of product at the cuticle area basically. So that's why you kind of want to place the bead right below and then work it towards the cuticle that way instead. Once the cuticle area is to your liking, you just want to mold the rest of the product into place. So I'm just dragging the rest of that product down, but I'm using a pretty light touch because I want to concentrate most of the product in the apex area to make sure I have enough strength. The more that you drag in terms of like pressure, more of the product will move down. So you'll want to adjust your pressure as needed, and then you can go ahead and cure that once it's done, and then we will move on to the next nail. So starting with our first bead here that we've placed kind of on the nail tip, and we're just patting things, kind of flattening it down a little bit before we start kind of shaping it to the sidewalls. So this is the benefit of using pre-shaped tips, because what you're basically going to do is try to make sure that your polygel application matches the nail tip, right? So you want to use that as your guide. You can also reverse brush like I'm doing here if you feel like too much of the product has been dragged down, and that's just another way to kind of smooth it, kind of going in the opposite direction. And then you'll see that I'm really just going back and forth on the sidewalls, because if you have too much product hanging off the sidewalls, it's going to make it more bulky and you'll have to do more shaping than is needed. So just keep refining that area and moving that product down and trying to make it match the nail tip as the best you can. Go ahead and apply our first bead to the rest of the nails and cure that before we go in with our second bead. Just like we did with the sidewalls, you do want to remove any excess product that may be hanging under the free edge. That can also create bulkiness, and then it'll save you some time on shaping as well. With the cuticle bead, so placing that below the cuticle area and then using the edges of our brush to tuck it into that cuticle area. From side to side here, you can kind of tilt your brush as needed. Once that's pretty much in place, you can go ahead and start dragging the rest of the product down, continuing to pat and switching between patting and dragging as needed. And once everything is looking good, you'll see that I basically just start dragging everything down here, and I'm using kind of a light to medium pressure because I want to distribute that product evenly across the rest of the nail. I don't want all of it at the free edge, but we want to make sure we have a good apex and that we're basically creating enough strength and structure that our nails don't break in that area. And then we will continue on with the cuticle bead for the rest of the nail. So you can just kind of watch how I use the different parts of my brush depending on which part of the nail I'm working on. So using the body of the brush to drag the product down, and then the edges of the brush for the cuticle area. Here's how the application is looking. It's not seamless or perfect by any means, but this is where shaping will come in and kind of refine and perfect that shape. So there will be a sticky layer when you finish the final cure. So you'll need to remove that. I'm using a lint-free wipe and some young nail swipe to do that, and then we will be ready for shaping. So we're gonna go back in with our Melody Susie e-file. And the first bit I'm gonna use is a Pana 5-in-1 fine grit drill bit. We're gonna use our Young Nails dust collector. We're gonna use an N95 mask, and we're also gonna wear safety glasses. Definitely do your research and take precaution when you're shaping. All of these products will be in the description if you're curious on what I use specifically. So we're gonna start off by cleaning up the cuticle area with this tapered 5-in-1 bit, the area that I'm pointing to here. We're just gonna run it along that area and kind of flush it out at a very low speed. And then you can also use that drill bit to clean any excess product that may be under the nail. Again, using a very low speed here, and then just kind of thinning out the free edge because there was a little bit of excess product there. And the reason I like to clean up the cuticle area first is because I feel like it kind of helps me see where I need to shape, more or less. One big thing I've learned, and I feel like I've said this in previous videos, is it's not just about like following a strict routine, but really actually looking at and assessing, you know, where the nail actually needs to be shaped more or less. You know, more shaping is not always a good thing. So anyways, I just feel like cleaning up the cuticle area kind of helps me see that a little bit better if I do that first versus later in the process. Then I go in with a round Pana bit. This just kind of helps me debulk and kind of start to smooth out the nail and remove any of those you know, bumps or uneven areas that may be on the nail. So I also would like to take it across the cuticle area. It just kind of helps flush out that area a little bit more and refine the apex a little bit more. And I'm using this at a much higher speed. This is probably about 7-8 RPMs, but definitely do what you're comfortable with. This is a coarse bit, so you know, definitely use a lower speed if you're not so used to it. And yeah, this motion is pretty simple. You just want to run it across the nail thoroughly to just basically start smoothing things out. And making sure that cuticle area is really nice and flush is also going to be key for retention. So I would definitely focus on that with both your 5-in-1 bit and then your round Pana bit as well. And I do keep removing any dust continuously from my hands and my nails because having a bunch of dust on your nails doesn't really help you see where you need to shape, so the manicure brush helps a lot with that. The next step is hand filing. So I'm using an 80/80 grit hand file and I'm just seasoning it because the edges can be quite rough. This is a pretty coarse file, so this will help ensure that you don't cut yourself or anything. And the first step I do when it comes to hand filing is I run the hand file under the sidewall. I try to keep the file straight, and this will basically just remove any product that may be under the nail and under the free edge as well. If you feel like there's any product that's still hanging under the free edge or you feel like you need to thin it out a little bit more, this will help with that. And then we're gonna go and take the hand file against the sidewall now. So trying to keep it, you know, just trying to keep contact with the entire sidewall more or less. But basically trying to keep my file straight where needed because this is basically gonna help taper it in because I want a really skinny almond shape. So running the file against the sides helps with that. And then the last step for hand filing for me is always just running the hand file over the surface of the nail. I try to run it over the entire nail, including from the kind of close to the cuticle area to the free edge. So I know we used our round Pana bit in the last step to start smoothing out any bumps that may be there, and using a hand file further helps with that. It kind of takes it to the next level. There are some things a hand file does that an e-file can't, and vice versa, so you'll see that the shape is starting to come together very nicely. And now I'm gonna use the less coarse side of my 100/180 grit hand file just to make sure the free edge is nice and round. The reason I don't want to use too coarse of a file is because I don't want to take off any more length or anything. I just want to make sure that it's nice and round the way that we started with before application, and this is the final look. So we are going to continue on and do that to the rest of the nails. So to give you an idea of like what I look for when I'm filing, like here you can see there's more unevenness on the top. There's like a little area that's sticking out. So I will focus my filing there and apply more pressure there versus the rest of the nail. And that will help even out that sidewall. And then I kind of see a similar issue on the other sidewall because we are going for a more narrow shape, right? So we want that to be, you know, a continuous kind of even sidewall there. And so those are the things that you'll start to pick up on as you get more experienced. So like I kind of said earlier, sometimes it's about kind of identifying where you need to shape more and where you need to shape less, because overfiling certain areas is really frustrating because you can only fix that by kind of going back and applying more product. So really important to kind of identify where you need to file more and not overfile certain areas. Also, I have a lot of other polygel tutorials on my page where I give, you know, similar tips, more tips, and just walk you through my process. You can always go and check those out if you want to get, you know, a feel for like other sets that I've done, you know, other shapes and styles. So you can check those out on my page. And I'm going to try to do a little bit less talking for the rest of the shaping, so you can just watch what I'm doing here. And the last step is just taking that same fine grit sanding band at a pretty high speed, about 9 or 10 RPMs, and just smoothing out the nail so that we have a nice buffed surface for nail art, or you can use a buffer, whichever you prefer. This is the most satisfying part, the final dust off, just getting all of that dust off. And I am gonna go wash my hands off camera as well. And then when I come back, I am taking some rubbing alcohol and just running that over the surface of the nail, removing any oils or leftover dust or anything. We want a really nice clean surface before we go in for nail art. And we're gonna be doing a freestyle set today. So I wanna matte top coat everything so I have a nice smooth surface for nail art. So using a matte top coat really helps with this because it basically creates a really smooth finish once you remove the sticky layer. So I'm going in with the Nails by Dev matte top coat, and I'm gonna apply a nice even layer to each nail and cure that. And if you're worried about losing any shape, you know, due to applying gel products or nail art, you can always run a lint-free wipe underneath before curing, just to remove any excess product that may be hanging under there. Once we've cured the matte top coat, we're gonna take a lint-free wipe and some rubbing alcohol, and we are going to wipe the sticky layer off of each of the matte nails, and this will reveal the matte finish. So it's kind of always cool to see when the matte finish is revealed, because once you wipe it and it dries, you'll see very quickly, like there's the matte finish. And then we're just gonna go ahead and repeat that to each nail, and then we will be ready to jump into nail art. So here's the inspo for today's set. We're gonna go for like a 2 of hearts swan theme, a very like dreamy pink and purple look, just like a, you know, unique Valentine's Day freestyle set. So I'm gonna start off with Madam Glam Pink with Benefits and Pink Liberty. just put them on my nail art palette, and I'm gonna put some shading gel by Nails by Dev also on the side here to add some shading when we get to that point. And I'm using her new Dream liner. This is the 5mm one. So this is like a smaller brush. And I'm just showing here, so we're gonna basically mentally divide everything into thirds. Half will be kind of a water scene, the middle will be the swans, and the top will kind of be like stars and sky type of scenery. So to draw the water that the swans will be on top of, I didn't want to make it blue. I actually wanted to make it like purple and pink. So I'm using that lighter pink with Benefits color, and I'm just using my 5mm brush. And you'll see that I'm using very short, uneven strokes and kind of drawing, you know, a curve at the top, you know, just to make it look like water as much as possible. You do want to create some depth and some texture. So don't worry about this looking, you know, even or anything. You actually don't want it to look perfect at all in this case. And just to make sure I'm kind of mapping out everything correctly, I'm gonna start drawing, you know, the rest of the scenery on the two other nails. So same thing here, just using kind of short, uneven strokes and basically drawing in the water, and the first color that we're using for that is the pink with Benefits, and just making the top of it kind of look wavy. And then we will go back and add some color once we've laid down the pink color on all three nails. Here's where I'm gonna use that black shading gel, which is kind of like a translucent black color, and mix some into the pink Liberty color, which is actually more of a purple color than anything. And this is what we're gonna use to create more depth and details in the water, just to kind of like create some details that look like waves. I did add a little bit of pink in there because I felt like it got a little bit dark, so you can go ahead and do that too if you'd like. I just love mixing colors recently, like just getting creative with that. Like you can definitely mix your gel polishes, just make sure that they fully cure. So here we go, we're taking that color and we're gonna start working that in with our brush. I haven't cured the pink yet, by the way. I feel like leaving it uncured and then doing the kind of purplish color on top helps it blend a little bit better. So literally just start drawing like little squiggly lines. They don't need to be perfect. Make them uneven, draw them randomly, and maybe focus a little bit more of that on the top of where the water is, just to define that area a little bit more. And once it's to your liking, you can go ahead and cure it. It's not shown on camera, but I do use the Young Nails lamp, but you could also use the Sun UV lamp if you'd like. Both are pretty much the same thing and will be linked in the description. For the swan, we're gonna start off with Perfect White, and I'll explain what the other two colors are for in a minute. So taking a 9mm brush, I'm basically drawing a backwards S. I wanna make sure the top of the head is more curved, and where the bottom of the swan will be, it's gonna be more of an elongated curve, if that makes sense, but just kind of watch how I'm doing it here. Once you kind of have like the basic outline down, you can go ahead and start adding depth. So you can see I rounded out the head a little bit more, and now I'm using my brush to create, you know, some of the body and feathers here, just adding in some depth and basically drawing lines connecting those two areas, and then just kind of adding in some more strokes to kind of create the feathers. And then to add in some depth and texture and shading, we are going to go in with a kind of light grayish color. So I mixed Fortune from Madam Glam with a little bit of that milky white color from earlier, Dreaming of Iceland and Purity from Madam Glam. And then I feel like I needed a little bit more gray, so I added that back in. So again, that's the fun part of mixing colors. You just kind of adjust as you go. And then I basically went ahead and started adding in small lines. These also don't need to be perfect, but basically it's just gonna serve as like the shading for the feathers at the bottom half of the swan, and you can go ahead and add a little bit at the top of the head and kind of the neck area as well. But I did try to focus the shading on the bottom half just so that it created kind of a feather look there. Then just adding a small dot with the black gel to create the eyes. Using Cackling Fire from Madam Glam for the beak, I'm just trying to brace my pinky here and make sure I'm in frame, which I don't always do the best job at. Bracing your pinky will definitely help kind of stabilize your hands if you're drawing small details like this. The beak is basically kind of a roundish triangle shape. Just make the top part a little bit more curved and make sure it comes to a point. Then for the other swan, I did draw it on the pointer finger. I wanted it to be on the nail right next to it, just so that, you know, it kind of mimics the photo with the swans kind of forming a heart when you put your nails together. So we're basically gonna draw the same thing and mirror it on this nail. So we're just drawing the basic outline of the S and then using our brush with more pressure to create larger, thicker lines and kind of fill in the body area. And then just make sure all the lines are kind of curved when you're connecting them. And then we'll go in with our gray mixture that we made to add in shading. The key to shading, I feel like, is not to make it look perfect. I feel like I've said that a million times in this video, but there are certain things that just don't need to be like super uniform or perfect to really create the nail art or type of design that you're going for. I mean, yeah, you kind of want the outline to be more or less perfect, but when it comes to shading, it's not supposed to be uniform, right? There's supposed to be like more color in one area than the other. So don't overthink it. Just add in the color and kind of blend with your brush. Now we're gonna draw the beak. This was actually a lot harder on this nail for some reason, but I'm just trying to create that kind of roundish triangle shape. And then I made the eyes a little bit bigger just to make sure they're even. Now we're gonna draw some clouds, super easy. Just take your dotting tool and kind of arrange it in like whatever basic outline you'd like. Leave it uncured and just go to town with your brush. Use basically small circular motions and it will start looking like a cloud as you bring the product down and fill in that area like I'm doing here. But using the dotting tool really helps kind of create the basic outline and guide. So I'm repeating that here, just adding in the dots and connecting them, rounding them out, but just using like short, uneven strokes. Clouds also don't need to look perfect. I mean, I kind of wanted to go for a little bit more of a realistic cloud versus like a cartoon sticker type look. And then I'm adding in a little bit of gray, that same mixture just to add some shading. And we're also gonna do one more small cloud down here, just above the water scenery. Just using very short, uneven strokes. And I didn't add much product to my brush either when I was connecting the dots that we had drawn. We're gonna add some star details with this vivid metallic purple paint. I'm just mixing it up so it's nice and even, but I realized I wanted to draw some hearts first on the thumb and the pinky. So we're gonna set this aside for a second and just go back to our white gel polish, draw 2 dots with our larger dotting tool, leave them uncured and just start basically filling out the heart shape. Just follow kind of the contours of, you know, the 2 circles you've drawn and just start kind of connecting them. Go side to side, you know, back and forth. I feel like that helps a lot just to make sure it's more or less even. And just basically fill in the shape and then you can round out the corners, you know, the tops of the hearts and kind of refine it as needed from there. It kind of felt like my wrist was breaking filming in this position, so I had to film the second heart off camera. But for the third one, same technique, 2 dots, start connecting them and dragging the product to create the heart shape. You want to make sure you have a healthy amount of product when you place the 2 dots because that'll help make sure you have enough product placed down to just basically drag from there and create the heart outline versus adding more product from your brush. And for the stars, just very quickly adding more stars with a dot at the center and dragging them down, using very short, quick strokes to create those thin lines. And then I'm using the nailz by Dev top coat after I've cured everything. This is my first time using this top coat, but I really like it. The Koopa top coat is also a great option if you want one from Amazon. I'll leave that linked below. That's what I usually use, but I wanted to try this out. So here is the final result and how everything turned out from start to finish. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I have more polygel ideas and press-on nail ideas on my page. And I do post weekly tutorials, whether that's polygel or press-on nails. So I hope you will follow along and I will see you in my next video.